Hi, I'm Flip Nicklin. Welcome to Humpback Chronicles. Again this week, I've got Mike Bennett and Tad Luckey, which are the two guys that took me out the first time I went to look at whales in 1979, but they'd already been doing stuff. And I think the idea of finding out what things were like before we first came with the nomads of the deep IMAX film in 1979, and what it was like with film crews and the people that were working on the water and how they interacted with film crews and with science. So Tad, what did you, I know you took out Roger Payne in 1973, I think, and I know you took us out in 1979. Did you take any other groups out between 73 and 79?
The Nomads was the first film experience that we ever, undertook. And we just bought the boat in 78. So the boat was ours. So it was our first real charter where we could actually get some revenue. It was a big deal for us.
What was the thing for you as far as taking out film crews that came along over the years? What was the best part of that or the best parts of that?
Well, by far the best parts was just getting together with the crews, because it wasn't for a one-day thing. It was for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So every single crew that we had pretty much really bonded. And that was the best experience. Just getting to know everybody, trusting everybody. And that was the most delightful part. When we started with your dad and IMAX, we didn't know anything about whales. Really, we didn't have a clue what we were really doing compared to what we know now. But it was just kind of fly by the seat of your pants back then. But then I got to work with Mark and Debbie Ferrari and Dan Salden, and then of course Megan and Jim Darling. So we got all these different researchers that were up on the flybridge with me for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And you can't help but absorb a lot of input and knowledge. Well, we'd have a shot list at first. The first day, the director said, this is the shot list for the day. We want 2 breachers, a mother and calf, and we want a big active group and a peck slapper and a tail slapper and a singer. And that was, on the shot list. Well, that all got thrown out the window. And Mark Ferrari is the one that said, hey, stop. There's a resting mom. And I was blown away. I went, how do you know it's a resting mom?
Yeah.
Never seen one. And it was this little calf up circling. He says, that's the calf circling. And mom's down sleeping. It's gold. Let's go.
All those little tricks that make you see the world differently once you know them,
Oh, yeah. It was just an eye-opener for me. I went,
National Geographic had just done a humpback whale story in 1979, but we're going to do another one in 1982. I don't think we had any idea that we were just beginning.
The IMAX film was just the start of a magical world for me. When, we were curious about the whales, we didn't know what to expect. But then when we started working with him, Jim Darling would be floating next to us in the broiling sun. We were sharing the permit, and we'd invite him aboard for shade. And then we'd get caught up in the discourses of what they were actually doing. We were just trying to film them going by. And we got caught up in their research. I did. And then we'd go to their rented beach houses and share the day's revelation and do it all the next day. It set the course for a lot of the rest of my life. I just got really caught up in their world. We didn't have a clue until we started working with those researchers.
The one question I had, and I'm almost afraid to ask this, but why were you so nice to us? I mean, it seemed like you were great with us and with Jim and when we came back in '96 with Whale Trust, it was just great. I mean, and sending Jason to us. What made our groups working together work?
That's a great question, because it all involved really one guy that set it all up, and that was my dad.
Yeah.
When Jim Luckey got involved, when the researchers first came in, when Jim Darling first showed up, he really helped set them up with places to stay and bent over backwards and opened up a lot of doors in Lahaina. And you guys were like family by the time Whale Trust came along. And we've done a lot of work with, I mean, you and Jim Darling and Megan, a lot of days together. So it was just more like family than, you know, just somebody looking for a boat or, you know, a captain. So we felt, you know, you guys were like part of the Ohana, as they say.
Well, that's very cool. I mean, I certainly felt that it moved to a different level when Jason came on.
That was.
I remember very clearly you
Yeah.
telling me all about him, and that if I didn't take him on, I was an idiot. You know?
Really? He came walking down the dock one day, and I was putting a radio on in the fly bridge of the canoa, our little boat, and I hear this, Mr. Luckey. And I would almost drop the mic, you know, right there, and went, oh my goodness, somebody called me Mr. Luckey. And I looked up and says, Jason Sturgis here. And I remember Jason from his mom and dad for years and years, great friends. And then he asked me if there's anybody involved in whales that he might be able to get in and do some, you know, help out and maybe get some photography lessons going, because he just graduated from photography school. And I had a complete brain lapse. I went through Mark Ferrari and Dan Salden, and I couldn't really, and then I looked down and Charles B is right next to me and went, oh my goodness, Jason, stop, wait. I got the guy, but let me try to set it up. So when I called you, I said, Flip, this is a guy that just called me Mr. Luckey. And that's like the only person in my life that's ever called me Mr. Luckey. I said,
Linda and I remind ourselves all the time how lucky we are for our friends. And this episode reminds me how lucky we are for the growing Ohana we have in Maui and beyond. Thank you very much, and thank you for your support. Bye-bye. And you might stay tuned here. In a few seconds, there'll be the Mike and Tad Show.
okay, we're really fortunate today to have this little meeting with one of our very, very best buddies from the old days, and today too, Mr. Michael Bennett.
Tadashi, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. We're just kind of reminiscing about our first Japanese charter that you were involved with.
Yes.
And fill me in on some of the things that happened.
We repressed most. It'll come back under hypnosis, Ted. But you remember, this was really early. This was our very first Japanese charter. We had no idea what to expect, you know. So I read my Shogun again. I got all up, but we had an interpreter coming, so we weren't too worried about it. And what happened there? Remember this?
Well, yeah, that was, we were promised an interpreter for the shoot because none of the team spoke any English. Yeah. So we met at the harbor. If you remember, there was quite a gang, I think 7 or 8 or 9 all together. And they got on the boat and started putting their wetsuits on, all their dive gear in the hot sun, you know, just sweating. And there was a guy on the dock, and I said, you're the interpreter. And he says, yes, but I'm not going.
Yeah.
I said, why? And he said, I get seasick, so you're on your own.
Fair enough.
Off we went.
Fair enough. Well, I remember this. Now back me up on this. So we head out of the harbor, and they're all getting their gear all together, and we're heading down into the Pailolo Channel there, and looking off, and there's a blowout in the distance, and Tad, you turn around to tell Ishii. Ishii was the guy in charge. Remember, Kiko was the model, but Ishii. And they spoke about the same amount of English as we spoke Japanese, which was, you know, that was fine. But anyway, we saw the blow, and you turned around and said, you pointed and said, Ishii, whale. And then we continued on looking for more blows. And then we had the deckhand. The Cowboy was our deckhand. That's how he introduced himself. That's, you know, Cowboy.
He was a cowboy.
So Cowboy, I remember, came up into where we were driving the wheelhouse, and he said, I hate to tell you this, boss, but it looks like it's just us. And so away with a pithy phrase. And so we turn around, and they're gone. They're gone. When you said whale, they'd all jumped over. We looked back, and there's heads bobbing around in the channel.
Yeah, they were over a mile, spread out over a mile away. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we went and picked them up, and then we sat down and tried to get, just some kind of communication together. And this is when you and I came up with our two Japanese words that were to take us through 7 Japanese film shoots. And one was mate, which means wait. And the other one was hayaku, which means hurry up. And those 2 words pretty much carried us through the whole shoot.
Yeah. Oh,
then there was a little Sarah Lee incident. Do you remember that?
Oh, well, Sarah Lee, well, that was early on. I remember Cindy was setting up the bento lunches, and Ishii was ordering the food, and then he'd at the end, and Sarah Lee, okay. So Cindy, of course, started with a carrot cake or something, and that didn't go over so well, and she brought in a cheesecake or something, and then and that didn't seem to go. Well, what kind of Sarah Lee? Well, regular kind. Remember this?
Yes. Yes, it was still in the cooler days later. I mean,
I know. But the only thing at the very end is when the mystery was solved. That Ishii finally showed up with a big bag of celery stalks, and he's handed them out, and he's handed one to Cowboy and says, "Sarah Lee." And Cowboy, don't mind if I do. I
Yeah. That was a real kind of a brain twister there, trying to figure out what kind of Sarah Lee they like.
But I don't know, it was just they were just delightful working with them. Just delightful.
Great people.
Something I don't know if we have enough time, that the story of the parrot story, when Ishii made a dinner reservation to celebrate how well the filming was going, but you couldn't make it because one of your pet parrots, you and Cindy's pet parrots, had died, and you were taking care of that, and I had something else to do, but we heard about it later. So Cowboy is at the dinner and sitting next to Akiko, and he starts to tell his regrets, to offer regrets that Tad couldn't make it because one of his parrots had died. And so in the translation that Ishii made, it turned out that one of your parents had died. And so the whole round of people, there's all this consternation and shaking of heads, and then that shook Cowboy up because he didn't know Japanese were so fond of parrots. So he said, Ishii said, well, does that mean that we might not be seeing Tad tomorrow, given this sad news? And Cowboy said, no, heck no. That parrot wasn't that fond of Tad anyway. It'd always bite him in the ear every time he turned his back. So that got translated around. I don't think the dinner ever recovered after that.
No, but it went on to be a great time and celebration after that shoot, and just a great bunch of people.
Oh yeah, that was wonderful. That was before Koji got it, and then that went on with Koji. We'll cover Koji later, because that's a whole nother wonderful character. Oh, absolutely.
Out of the Japanese film groups.
What a delightful chapter.
Yeah, really. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Michael Bennett. You're awesome.
Wonderful to see you, my friend.
Yes, we will do this again.
We'll be over to celebrate soon. All right, okay. Tad. Thank you, man. See ya. Bye.